Hello, my name is Angeli Pino. I am a licensed professional counselor in the state of Georgia, and I am a life coach as well. So I have clients that are in the state of Georgia and outside of the state of Georgia as well. And just a very quick disclaimer, I am not your therapist, but I can be. So you could always message me on any one of my platforms. And especially if you're in the state of Georgia and you need, therapy, which you might have insurance or something like that. And if not, then, we could also do some life coaching as well. So I always give my clients the best of the best, regardless if they are insured or if they're paying out of pocket, whether it's through, if it's through counseling or whether it's through coaching. But with that, it's just a small disclaimer, right? So I'm just giving advice and you get to choose if you're going to take it or not. So hopefully you will. Hopefully this helps. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the ABCs in psychology. And I did a video that should be out there of the law of choice, which does have a little bit to do with this video that I'm going to do. But we're going to start out with the A in the ABCs, which is antecedents, which is a word that means a behavior that's been established, right? Something that comes before. And so we do get a lot of our thoughts, a lot of our words, and a lot of our behaviors from our family and those people who raised us, whether they're our mom and dad or whether they're grandparents or caregivers. We get a lot of our behaviors, a lot of our thoughts from them. And so it's very important to know that there's things, that we could change anything we want in our mind. So it's not written in stone. It's not permanent. It is changeable. So that's a good thing. And so when we do change our thoughts and make them better, we do change our life. We change our emotions. We change our words. We change our behaviors. We change our body changes as well, because our thoughts influence everything. And so oftentimes I see in a lot of my clients where I have a parent that says, I've had ADHD since I was a child, and now my child has ADHD, and I am certified in ADHD because I have a lot of clients that come to me for that, right? But I teach them as well that it's not a permanent diagnosis. It's something that is changeable. A lot of people don't believe that it's changeable. I do believe that it is, because I believe that anything in the mind is changeable. But the thing is that a lot of these children that have ADHD normally come from parents who have ADHD behaviors. And so they're just transferred, right? They just learn to do these behaviors, right? And so that isn't with all the cases. So I will say that it's not with all the cases. But it is in a lot of the cases. Same thing comes with eating habits, exercising habits, everything. I see that there's these little mini me's walking around and parents are frustrated. But I'm like, but this is what you taught your children. This is what you're training your children to do. You want your child to act differently, you have to change them. You have to train them to act the way you want them to act. And if they're acting this way, it's because they've been trained to act this way, right? And so they bring them to me and hope to change. And that's where I always tell my parents, especially working with children and adolescents, parents also have to take counseling with me as well, because there is no point of helping the child when the parents remain the same. There has to be change in the whole entire house in order for children and teenagers to change. So we will always have, we always have thoughts, and we are always everything that we do in life comes from a thought. And where does that thought come from? It usually comes from before us. It might come from our ancestors. It might come from generations past, but they are handed down like a heirloom, right? It's like handed down from generation to generation. A lot of that is good, and a lot of that is bad, right? And so we want to obviously remove those things that are bad for us, that give us bad consequences. So we want to remove that. So antecedents are events or stimuli that occur before a behavior and can influence or trigger that behavior. For example, in the context of operant conditioning, which is something that you learn in psychology, and antecedent might be a specific cue or instruction that leads to a particular behavior, right? And so that moves us on to the B of the ABCs, which is behavior. So when we have behaviors, it's because we had a thought that has an emotion attached to it that becomes a behavior. It's a way that we respond according to a thought that we had, right? So oftentimes when I teach my clients about anger, because they suffer from anger, they're easily triggered, or, they become explosive, or, they start swearing or yelling or stuff like that. So we talk about that. There's a difference between, and I'll make a video on it as well, is about being aggressive and being assertive, right? And so there's behaviors because we have a thought. We have a thought that if somebody says something to us that's offensive or yells at us, our thought is to defend ourselves, and therefore I'm going to also yell at you, or I'm also going to shove you, or I'm also going to say something hurtful to you, because we're taught to defend ourselves that way, depending on the home that we grew up in, right? So if we grew up in a home that was hostile, or there was a lot of aggression or a lot of verbal abuse or a lot of yelling, guess what we're going to do? We're going to do the same thing. We're going to think that that's the way to solve our problems and to fix our problems, because that's the way we saw our mom and our dad do it at home. And so I say this because I'm an example of it. You know, my father was very verbally abusive and would yell and scream. And that's exactly what I learned. You know, I thought that if I wanted to get my point across, it was to do it that way. And so I came to realize that that is not the healthiest way. That is not the correct way. Right? So I'm not going to get anything done by yelling at people and saying bad words or anything like that. You know, I'm just going to push people away from me and make them afraid of me. And that's not what I wanted. So we have to learn to change our behaviors, right? That we understand. And I just take being angered as an example, but there could be anxiety, it could be depression, it could be a lot of other different things. But if I have certain behaviors, that is telling me that I'm having those thoughts. If I do not like my behaviors, then I need to change the way I'm thinking. I need to change the thought that is attached to that behavior, and I need to remove it and implement a new thought so that I have a new behavior. So let's go back to the example of anger. You know, we all get angry. It's a human emotion. We all have anger. We're going to get angry. But it's how I react when I'm angry or how I respond to people, that's the difference. When I start hurting other people and crossing those boundaries and being offensive and hurtful and rude and scary and intimidating to other people, I've crossed the limits. I don't need to get that far. I don't have to do that to get my point across, right? I can get angry, and there's different things that I could do with that anger, and it's about having self-control, and that's where we want to get with our anger. But I only came to have those behaviors when I started changing my thoughts, when I understood that being aggressive with my words or being hurtful or being rude or wanting to punch people or hurt people or shove people wasn't the correct way. So I had to say, well, I need to change my thoughts about this. And yes, I am going to get angry, and that is a human emotion, and there's nothing wrong with that. It just becomes hurtful when I cross those lines, when I start invading other people's, personal space and stuff like that. And so, can you change that? Of course you can. Of course you can. You just have to say, well, I need to start changing these thoughts so that my behaviors show what I'm thinking, right? They're going to be connected. So if my thoughts about anger is defending myself and yelling and, pushing people away and stuff like that, then obviously those are the behaviors I'm going to have. But if my thoughts about being angry is saying, hey, I could be angry, I could be assertive, I could learn to walk away, I could be gentle with my words, I could learn to bite my tongue or hear the person out and not take it personal, not take it to so that I could get offended by it, right? And then that way you change your behaviors. So it really is changing the thought about being angry. But usually we learn how to be angry with how we were raised in our home, right? So we if we want to change behaviors, I have to change the way I think. So in psychology, behavior refers to an observable and measurable action, reaction, or response of an individual or organism to stimuli in their environment. So behavior encompasses a wide range of actions and can include both conscious and subconscious actions. So sometimes we do things we do things that are just unconscious sometimes, or not aware of what we're doing, because there's people that get into fits of rage and just angry and start saying things, and then I have to come back and apologize, and I have to come back and say, I'm sorry, I can't, I don't even know why I said that, I can't believe I said that to you and stuff like that. So we have to be very, very, very careful of our behaviors. So we have to be then more careful of what we're thinking, right? So that we don't behave that way or respond to people in a negative way, right? Because we destroy relationships. We destroy, people that we are associated with. We destroy relationships that we're involved in, whether it's, marital, whether it's our children, whether it's other family members, or relationships as far as like friends and stuff like that, or business partners, or, just people that we're involved in. We're constantly involved with people. So we have to really, really be aware of our behaviors. And if we notice our behaviors, because they're noticeable, we notice them, other people notice them as well. And we know when we're becoming hurtful, we're becoming aggressive, we need to learn to change our thoughts, implement new thoughts, right? And decide, hey, enough is enough. And that's obviously that's something that you have to decide to change. Psychologists study behavior to understand how individuals interact with their surroundings and how they respond to various stimuli and how their actions are influenced by cognitive processes and external factors, right? So it just goes back to the things that we've learned, right, of how to behave with other people. And we have to learn to say, okay, so I need to go back to my thoughts so that I have different kind of behaviors. And with that, also words as well, because our words come from our thoughts. And I'm going to make a video about the power of your words, that it's so important, because words are so hurtful and so traumatizing. Because oftentimes I have clients that says it wasn't because they hit me, it was because of the words they told me. They told me this word that broke my heart into a million pieces, and to gather all those pieces would be, take all of eternity. that's how deep those words are. Our words can be very cutty, very hurtful, very deadly to a lot of people. So we have to be just so aware of our words. And there's scientific research that has been done about the energy and the power that actually comes out of every word that we say. Our words are not void of power. They have power in them, and we have to be very careful of how we use our words, whether for good or whether for bad, right? They do have their consequences. So the third is the C, which is consequences. And in psychology, consequences refer to the outcomes or results that follow a specific behavior or action. Consequences play a crucial role in shaping and influencing our behavior, and they can be either positive or negative. So understanding consequences is essential in various psychological theories and therapeutic approaches, particularly in the context of behaviorism and operant conditioning. So a lot of the things that I teach in therapy is consequences. There's always going to be positive or negative consequences to our behaviors and to our thoughts, right? They just go backwards. But consequences are so important. And oftentimes we have behavior depending on the consequences that we want to have. So for instance, if you go to the gym every day, you have a thought, you're going to the gym, you have a behavior, you go to the gym, right? Because the consequence of that behavior and that thought is that you want to see improvement in your body, or you want to see weight loss in your body, or you want to see muscle being built in your body, right? And so that is the consequences. That's the consequence that you're hoping to get by the behavior that you had because you had a thought, right? So it goes back. I have a thought, I have a behavior, I have a consequence. So when we look towards the future, you want to ask yourself, well, what kind of consequence am I wanting? And if it's a positive one, then you know that you have to have a positive behavior. And with a positive behavior, a positive mindset, right? And so when you constantly have negative consequences in your life and things seem to go wrong all the time, it's not because life is out to do you ugly. It's not that we live, like, wow, the world sucks, and stuff like that. We could think that way, but that's not a good consequence to have, right? That's not a good thought and behavior and consequence to have. So the world is not out to do you ugly. What is out to do you ugly is your own mindset. And so we have to be interior people. We have to think. We are thinkers. We have to be very, we have to have a rational way of thinking, right? And so we can't just be blamers, the sun didn't come out today, or, it's raining today, or so-and-so didn't do this for me. And if so-and-so would change, then I would change. And that's not how it works. Then you're never going to get, you're never going to have a very positive life or a very happy or good life if we're constantly looking for something to change outside of me. No, I change, and the things outside of me change, right? And so I have to be the one to make the change. And change it takes dedication. It takes being intentional. Right? It takes writing down those things that you want to change, right? And then working towards those things every single day until that change becomes a habit in you and becomes very automatic and very natural, to the point where you move to something else that you want to change, right? And then that thing that you started to change becomes a habit in you. But usually when I teach a lot of my parents about their children, right? So children, with their bad behavior and stuff like that, they don't do their homework, they don't like to do their chores, like to be on their phone all day long, and a lot of parents get frustrated and get annoyed or angry at their kids because they could tell their kids, and their kids seem not to listen. And that's usually how it works because kids don't hear. I think 7% of 100% of the things that parents do, 7% is 7% is talking. They hear 7% of what you're saying, but they hear about 85% of what you are doing with your body and your facial expression and your body language. So they do see that more than they actually see the words come out of your mouth. So oftentimes I teach my parents, well, we have to have positive consequences, and then, and discuss that. So I'll tell you what a positive consequence is. So a positive consequence are outcomes that follow a behavior and increase the likelihood of that behavior being repeated. So this is where we have, like, I go back to the gym situation as an example, but when we go to the gym and we start building that muscle, losing that weight, that's a positive consequence. So guess what? We're going to want to repeat that over and over again because we see the results are positive and they're not automatic, right? They don't happen on day one. But as you become very repetitious in that behavior and continue to hit the gym, lift the weights, do the cardio, whatever it is that you're wanting to accomplish, and you see the positive consequences of that, the positive results, you're like, shoot, I'm going to continue to do this over and over and over and over and over again because I enjoy the results of that, right? And so that is called positive consequences. They can be rewards, reinforcements, or incentives. For example, if a child receives praise and a treat, a positive consequence for completing their homework, they are more likely to continue doing their homework in the future, right? So if you give them a reward for doing their homework, and sometimes people are like, well, they should be doing that automatically. For a lot of kids, it's very hard to follow through on doing their homework because they've been in school for 8 hours a day and they come home and they